You're listening to the When Life Hands You Lemons podcast.
But in an entry-level film production, it's one strike and you're out. You're fired. I'm not calling you back.
If your goal today is to make a basket, we're going to make that basket.
The minute you create something, as soon as it's made tangible, you have a copyright in it.
How do I get our guys to sound that big, that full when they do the harmonies?
And I'm your host, Lennon Seahawk. Let's get to the show. Hello and welcome to another episode of When Life Hands You Lemons. This is a really great episode because it features Jody Friedman, who is a music supervisor, music producer, award-winning songwriter, and music publisher. Now, Jody grew up in Clearwater, Florida, and he attended Florida State University and majored in communications and media production. He spent 7 years working for CNN in Atlanta, New York City, and California. And during this time, he wrote a theme song for the show Nancy Grace, which was his foray into the music publishing world. His in-depth knowledge of music publishing and copyright allowed him to build his company HD Music Now from the ground up. For over a decade, they have been regularly licensing music and sound design to the likes of ABC, NBC, Showtime, HBO, CW, Sony, Universal, Disney, Warner Brothers, Bunim-Murray, MTV, and many more. In addition, his music supervision and clearance projects include projects like Ugly Delicious on Netflix, Breakfast, Lunch, and Dinner on Netflix, Won't You Be My Neighbor for Focus Features, Ingress, the animation on Netflix, They'll Love Me When I'm Dead on Netflix, Snowfall on FX, Fear Inc., The Lone Suspect, and The Music of Strangers, Yo-Yo Ma and the Silk Road Ensemble on HBO, and many more. He's also a member of the Guild of Music Supervisors. In addition to all the other projects that he's working on, he writes and produces for trailers and ads. In 2017, a song he wrote and produced called Pure as Snow, the Mike Rasnick remix, was used for the trailer campaign for Hulu's The Handmaid's Tale Season 1. In 2019, an original piece called Creepy Cradle was used for the trailer campaign for the Eli Roth horror film Haunt. In other songs that he's wrote have been heard in Ray Donovan on Showtime, Victorious on Nickelodeon, and Outcast on Cinemax, and many, many more. And lastly, he's worked and co-written with artists and songwriters like Jason Matthews, Chris Bergsness, Marty Dodson, Rebecca Lynn Howard, and many, many more. So I'll let Jody tell much more information about his story and how he's worked on all these projects, how he's been able to get these projects. And we also talk about what sync licensing is. We talk about being a music supervisor. We talk about his music supervision projects. We talk about what to look for in a music supervision contract. We talk about what he's looking for when he's being pitched, how he keeps himself organized, and many, many other things. So I'm really excited for this conversation. It's so great. He gave so much information, and I learned so much, especially at the end when we talk about contracts and what to look for in a license, music license for sync licensing. So before I let you go and we dive into the episode, I want to remind you to please sign up to my mailing list, which is on my website, which is lennonsiak.com, and also in the link below. I would also appreciate if you would find me on Instagram, which is lennonsiak.com, and follow me there. I post podcast stuff there, and you can keep up with my daily life. I would also appreciate a 5-star rating and or review, as it greatly helps the show be discovered on Apple Podcasts. And lastly, if you or somebody you know would be a good guest for the show, please fill out the form and I will reach out. So without further ado and without further rambling, let's dive into my conversation with Jody Friedman. I want to get started by kind of checking in. How's quarantine? Where are you coming to me from? How's all that stuff?
Sure. Yeah. No, I'm in my home office in Mission Viejo, California, and it's greater Los Angeles area. And we're for me, it's normal. I'm normally working from home. The only difference is everybody's home now. So, but we're making it work. Kids are in school, virtual schooling, and my wife's set up with her office upstairs, and I've got my office downstairs, and we're making it work.
Cool. So you're not from California, right?
No, I'm from Florida. I grew up in Clearwater, Florida, which is west coast of Florida, Gulf Coast. I'm sorry. Where am I? I'm in California. It's it's the west coast of Florida.
Florida. Yeah, it's in the Gulf of
Right.
Mexico there. Yeah, I lived in Florida for like 5 years out in Orlando.
You know Clearwater.
I know where it's at. But yeah, so you went to school for what, communications and media production?
I did. Yeah.
So tell us how you got, like, if you've always been a musician, how you got into that type of thing and how you got to where you are now, basically.
Sure. I picked up the guitar when I was 14, and all my friends were playing, and we were all trying to get girls. So
Sure.
everybody picked up the guitar, and some of us stuck with it. Actually, my older brother started playing before me, and he started taking some guitar lessons. So I started fiddling with his classical guitar, and I think I was 14, so he was 17. And it just kind of stuck to me, like, a lot of my friends, not everybody, but a lot of them, out of maybe 6 of us, our little core group, there were 3 that stuck with it. And for me, I practiced every day after school. I'd come home and just listen to songs and try to figure out like the solos, and I learned chords and I learned strumming, and I couldn't sing for. Am I allowed to curse on this podcast?
Yes.
Yeah, I couldn't sing for shit. So I practiced and practiced and practiced, and finally one day I remember. I don't remember what song it was, but I was singing a song while playing, and I remember it clicked. And it was that moment where the right hand figures out what the left hand's doing and can kind of work in tandem, and something changed, and I was able to sing and play at the same time. So from there, I was really involved with my youth group, my Temple youth group. And with our youth group, we had song leaders, which were nominated members of a board that we were responsible for leading song sessions at like summer camps and conventions. And so I really cut my teeth in that world, in just the experience of playing in front of people, playing and singing and leading them also. So learning how to involve and feed off the crowd and work together with the crowd. That was all from my youth group. And, I wasn't really in a band. I started writing around the same time. I started writing when I was 14. I was very, very quick to want to write a song. I was listening to, and I grew up on a lot of the singer-songwriters like James Taylor and Harry Chapin and Simon and Garfunkel and those old 60s singer-songwriters. So folk songwriting was really at my core, and then I had a love for pop music and pop melodies also, and then all the other genres that came with that. And with my age, being born in 1980, I was a kid of the late 80s, early 90s, so grunge and some hip hop in there, but really grunge, and in my area, punk and ska was a real big thing. So I got into guitar, and but anyway, that was at my core. And then I went to school for TV production, and I was gigging, writing, playing in bands. But I went to Florida State, and I always liked creating, and I also love film. I always loved films, and I wanted to go to film school. So Florida State at the time had the number 3 film school in the country. So I applied, and unfortunately I didn't get in, but I went to the School of Communications and did TV production instead. So out of school, got a job in Atlanta, working at CNN in Atlanta, and had a band in college also, had band in Atlanta, I was myself in Atlanta. I didn't really have a band there, but I gigged around a bit while I was working, just as a hobby. And, I went from Atlanta to New York with CNN. And while I guess I'm part of the story is that I've told this story a lot. While I was at CNN, there was a talent contest in 2002. It was the first year of American Idol, and Kelly Clarkson had just won. So CNN decided to do an international talent search competition. So I wrote a song about my job called the Prompter Song, about working the teleprompter and then working your way up the ladder to camera and audio to technical director to director, and performed it at the Tabernacle in Georgia in front of all the company execs and the whole company. There were thousands of people there, and or so it seems in my mind. Maybe it was more like 1,000, but it was a lot of people. And anyway, I won first prize, and that it got me a meeting the next day. The president of CNN called me into his office, and that got me the job in New York. I think that really at least helped, because I had applied for a job in New York, and he saw that I applied and asked me how would he like to go to New York. So I think he put in a good word with me with the New York office. So that got me to New York. And while I was in New York, I was an audio tech on the Nancy Grace show. And on Nancy Grace, I was on the way to a gig, and I had my guitar in my back, and I ran into the executive producer, a guy named Dean Sicoli. And Dean and I started talking about music, and Dean was nice enough to just ask me. He said, we need a theme song for the show. If you want to put something together and get it to us. So I went home that night, and I opened up GarageBand, and I threw together a drum loop, a bass loop, a guitar loop, a siren sound, and it was very poorly mixed. And this was 2004, 2005. And, I brought it into work the next day. I played it for him, and I played it for Nancy and the other producers, and it eventually became one of the theme songs for the show. So, while I was working there, they had a Borders bookstore in Time Warner Center at Columbus Circle. So I would go there on my breaks and read books about publishing, and, how to make money from music was basically what I was looking for. How do I make money from this? Because while I enjoyed TV, I enjoyed what I did, there were some things about news that I didn't really love. So, and I always had at my core a passion for music, and knew it was what I wanted to do with my life if there was any way to do it. So that was kind of a light bulb going off, saying, wow, you can actually monetize music. And my career took a big turn there, because mentally I made the choice to commit to doing music. And again, during my breaks, I got the old musician's handbook and went through the list and started mailing my demos off, with letters and sealed envelopes, self-addressed stamped envelopes you'd send with them, and they'd send you usually a rejection letter back. Mm-hmm. And, I just went through the list, through the book, and anything that applied to the release that I did at the time, which was kind of a pop rock sounding album, anything that fit that, roots rock, pop rock, Americana rock, I would just mail that out. And, honestly, we hadn't earned a dime when I quit my job, and my wife had got a job out here, and she quit her job, and we moved out west to California from New York. We moved to this area in OC, and we had family here too, but we settled here, and I started my company, and it took a while. It took a couple years to really get some activity and be making some income. I had to really pound the pavement and, meet with music supervisors, do my research, take people out to eat, get to know them a bit, and let them know who I am, what I do. And I learned very quickly out here that I couldn't just represent myself and my own music if I wanted to have a career, because it was just not feasible for me. It was not enough. There was not enough areas that I could just fit Jody Aaron, the artist, into to sustain, especially in California. It's so expensive out here. So I started signing other artists and other producers and composers, and then things started to pick up. And I got my first good placement in True Blood Season 2 in 2008. And things kind of spiraled after that. You know, you get one placement and other music supervisors start to pay attention. If one guy pays attention, then others start to, and, you know, another person does. And, you know, it's been 12 years of licensing. I've had a lot of licensing success over the years. I've been very fortunate with that. And in 2008, around the same time, I started music supervising. And that was also circumstance. A friend brought me in on his film to act actually on his film. He brought me in to play the role of Ryan Adams. He thought I looked like Ryan Adams, so I played the part of Ryan Adams. And we started talking about music and licensing. And I asked him, you know, what music are you using for your film? And I said, you know, I'll music supervise it for you if you want. And he let me. You know, I had a $25,000 budget, and we had about, I think, 12 songs to clear, maybe. Lexi Murdoch and Ryan Adams and Whiskey Town and some other names from the time. And it was a good project. It was a great experience, and it got me my next 2 gigs, and actually led to a recent gig. Like, when you're a music supervisor on projects, it's all about who you meet and your crew, and, you know, your sound editor and your composer, and forming those relationships, and then, you know, helping each other out, trying to get each other jobs when you're on another job. And I've been very lucky with that. And yeah, that's the story.
Yeah, that's interesting. The interesting thing about you is you've been on both sides of the spectrum. You've been one to have your music license, and you've also been the one licensing the music. So you've got kind of an interesting perspective, as not most people have that. So when you got the Nancy Grace theme song and you got that and you were reading all that information, what was that deal like? Did you just give it and they just start using it, or did they sit down and have a deal with you? Or kind of walk us through that process. Like, how did you get paid? Are you still getting paid for royalties? Like,
Sure.
What is that?
That's a great question. Yeah, so I don't remember them sitting down with me. I remember that an agreement came by email. And there was an executive producer, not Dean, but another gal, and she told me it'd be coming, and it arrived. And by that time, I mean, it was airing already, as usually happens. Now I know it's very common for stuff to air before a license is actually in place. But they knew I was going to let them have it, so they started airing it, and the license came, and then I started looking at it. And I had done enough research about publishing by that time to know that I wanted to say no to their request, which was for a direct license. So I didn't expect there to be a license fee because I worked for CNN. And it was my first placement ever. I was just happy to have a placement. But when I saw that they wanted a direct license, which was a pretty common request for CNN.
And what does a direct license mean?
Sure. A direct performance license is basically, they said, we're not going to pay you a license fee, but also we're not going to pay you any royalties.
Ouch.
Yeah. So,
so are they owning the whole master and the publishing then?
Yeah. Well, no, they didn't own anything. I still maintained ownership, but a direct license, what a direct license is they say, typically they pay you a license fee, and that license fee, or that upfront fee, covers not just the sync fee or the synchronization license, the fee for that, the words and the music to go with picture. There's also a license fee that goes for the recording, the copyright for the sound recording to the sync to picture. But then there's the royalties, and if they don't want to, basically they typically will pay a fee and say, instead of just keep it simple, instead of a $5,000 license fee, we're going to give you $10,000, and you're not going to get any back end royalties. They don't own anything, but they're saying to you, we're going to pay you all that money right now. Right? So by agreeing to that, I'm waiving my right to any future income from royalties. And it can be good and it can be bad. It depends on the situation. With this situation, because there were no license fee, I'm so glad I said no, because I did get royalties for that. I'm not anymore. But on my way across the country, actually, after I quit my job, it was on our way out west that the royalty check came, and this was in 2006. So it had been airing for a good year and a half at that point. So I got a year and a half retroactive of royalties for a theme song, which was pretty hefty. And, if I had agreed to that direct license, I wouldn't have had that. Now, what I assumed was when I got that was that I was going to get that every quarter, that check was going to continue and continue. And that was just from lack of an understanding of how it works. And so when the next quarterly check came from ASCAP or didn't come, I was calling my ASCAP rep and asking her what's going on. Why is there no, what happened to that big check? I was kind of counting on that. And she explained to me that CNN in particular has what's called a random sample survey agreement with ASCAP. This is 14 years ago. I don't know what their deal is now. But at the time, it was a random sample survey instead of a census survey. And what that means, basically networks like ABC, NBC, CBS, they'll have census surveys, which means every single airing is going to receive some sort of royalties. And it all comes down to the type of license that network negotiates with ASCAP and the license fee that they pay. So ABC is going to pay a much higher license fee than CNN will, because ABC is using a ton of popular music. And their broadcast, their reach is much bigger than CNN. So with CNN, they were on a random sample survey, which means that, or at the time it meant that once every quarter, they picked one day and they surveyed a time block, a 2-hour time block. And if your song happened to air during that 2-hour time block, you would get paid retroactively for however long that song was airing. So the date they sampled was October 15th, 2005, between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. And Nancy Grace aired around 6:30 p.m., I think, or 6 p.m. Eastern time. So my song was airing, luckily, during that time. So they paid out retroactively for 2 years on that. But yeah, if they sampled a different time block, a different 2-hour time block, then I wouldn't have got anything. And and that's where that direct license offer can be kind of a gamble, because if I didn't get sampled and they had offered me money for that direct license, maybe taking the $5,000 would have been worth it. So it's all situational with that. But usually you want to say no to a direct license, not only for the reason I just explained, but because it creates a situation where more and more people will try to do direct licenses, which will make writers' royalties less and less. And those composer royalties are invaluable, especially for composers who rely on that composer income. If more people do direct licenses in the US, then that could potentially go away. I don't see it ever really going fully away, but it could definitely get less and less.
Sure.
We've already seen some of that. So, yeah.
Sure. So sync licensing is very interesting. And can you break down, for those that may not understand it entirely, is the difference between the recording and then the publishing. And there's two different royalties there, and how kind of like a sync license works, and how you have to get a license for both, or maybe just one. And then break that down. Like, what are some of the, like, what can an artist make? Like, let's say I write a song and you want to put it in, a movie. What can I make? How much is that license going to cost? How much can I charge? And then what are the royalties like? Do the royalties vary based on the network that's airing it, or the wherever it's airing? Kind of, can you break that down a little bit?
Yeah, there's no simple answer.
It's kind of a loaded question.
It's a loaded question, but let's start with like the basic fundamentals of sync licensing.
Yes.
And it goes back to, I mean, using that basic example, just the CNN license. Even it's when I compose that piece of music, I own my own publishing as the composer. So Jody Friedman was the songwriter, and Jody Friedman Publishing was the publisher. I happened to go down and set up an actual Jody Friedman doing business as Harmony Distribution, and that's my publishing entity. And any songwriter can do that, and then you have an entity that actually publishes your song, and you can license that song. That's a copyright that you can file with the Library of Congress, or that's what you should do to have the full copyright protection. But a lot of people don't do that. Doesn't mean you don't own that copyright. The minute you write it, the minute you create it, you own it. You become the publisher. If you make it publicly available, it kind of has a timestamp on it by doing that, especially in today's day and age.
Mm-hmm. I've heard that as long as it's in a tangible form, and this includes digital, it's copyrighted. And the reason you should register it with the Library of Congress is because, so then if somebody uses it, you can sue them. That's just what I've heard, and from lawyers and stuff. I don't know exactly how true that is, but this is what I've heard recently.
Yeah, anybody can sue anybody, mm-hmm. whether it's registered or not, right? But if it's registered, then you're subject to you have the ability to go after what's statutory damages. So there's a statutory up to $150,000 per infringement if it's registered. If it's not registered, then there's some other things you can pursue. But if it's registered, then you can definitely rely on those statutory damages. So it's definitely good protection to have. And what the other copyright is, you have the song, the words, and the music, which is the song or the publishing. Mm-hmm. And then you have the sound recording, which is the record, the MP3, the final record, the CD, the DAT tape, whatever it is. It's the record, it's the recording, mm-hmm. the tangible recording. And they're two separate copyrights, and you register them with the Library of Congress. There's the Form PA, Performing Arts, for the words and the music. There's the Form SR for the sound recording. I encourage every songwriter. I first did this when I was 20, to just go to the Library of Congress website and fill out the form. Follow the instructions, just like filling out a tax document. It's super boring, but it's a great experience. You got to understand the business that you're in. And if you're wanting to be a songwriter, anybody wants to be a songwriter, there's the art and there's the business. Like anything, you've got to understand the business.
And you got to protect your art.
You've got to protect your art. That's one of the main parts of the business. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, go file the Form PA, file the Form SR, just to get the experience of doing that. So at the fundamental, you have these two copyrights now. And when it comes to a sync license, if I'm supervising a project and I'm going to license, I guess we'll do a simple example. If it's a one-stop shop, which means there's a party that controls both copyrights, mm-hmm. both the record and the publishing. Mm-hmm. I can go to that party and say, here's my budget. I want to license this from you. Is it a one-stop? They say yes. I say, great, here's a license. And that license defines the terms in it. It states that them as the owner control both the master, which is the record, and the publishing. They control those rights. They agree to the terms, the territory, the type of use, the scene description, how long it's going to be airing for, the rights we need, which means, we want all rights excluding theatrical. We don't need theaters, but we need everything else. In context trailer use, which means it can be used the way it's being used in the film. It can be used in a trailer, which means if the trailer occurs and your song happens to be in the scene, it can be used like that. Mm-hmm. What they can't do without out of context rights is extract that song and score the trailer with it. That's very different. So typically that's a separate right that's negotiated for. So anyway, we issue the license, you agree, you get paid, you're happy, I'm happy, my client's happy, and then it's a done deal. You're not selling anything. It's a license. It's like, defined set of terms, like leasing a home. Mm-hmm. Or, I think that's the closest thing I can compare it to.
Yeah, or leasing an apartment. You have a 30-page document where you sign, you're going to be in the apartment for this long. This is what you're going to pay for rent. This is what's included in rent. If, you break something, this is what's going to happen. And it just lays out all the terms, everything, from damage control to what you're going to get paid, what you're going to be paying, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely.
So that's a great explanation.
Yes. Well, was there another part of that question?
No, that was the first part, was kind of breaking down the difference between the two copyrights.
Yeah.
And then how you can kind of obtain one. So now that you've broken it down, let's move into the next phase. Like, okay, I know what it is. I know what I need. I've got, let's say I'm a one-stop shop. How am I pitching? What am I looking for? How am I pitching music supervisors? What are you guys looking for? Those types of things. How am I researching these types of things?
Yeah, there's all sorts of resources available online for researching projects. IMDb is probably the best one.
Okay.
Internet Movie Database, imdb.com. And there's IMDb Pro. And if you subscribe to IMDb Pro, sometimes supervisors, we'll put our contact info up there. People submit to me all the time, and I know my colleagues get submitted to as well. And there's plenty of supervisors that are much more busy than I am as a supervisor. And even them, they get submitted to, and like me, it's like it depends on the day that you email us. Depends on what else we have going on. I used to really pride myself in listening to everything that got sent to me, and over the past 3 years, I just can't keep up with it anymore. So, how you frame your email definitely helps. Doing your research, not pitching me as Dear Mrs. Jody Friedman, knowing at least that I'm a guy.
Yeah, sure.
Helps. It just shows me attention to detail. Like I'm so used to people confusing my name, getting soccer trophies with ponytails on them and whatnot. I'm used to that by now. But what it shows me is that this person doesn't pay attention to detail, which means that their product is not going to be great.
And they're probably just mass pitching.
Yeah, and that I can digest. I mean, there's something to be said for being targeted with your pitches, absolutely. Mm-hmm. But I do understand, having done that, having been there and done that. I don't hold that against people for mass pitching. That's part of the business. But even when you're mass pitching, you still customize your email towards the person. There's only so many supervisors, really, and if you're targeting TV, it's one thing. If you're targeting films, it's a whole nother thing. And ads and trailers and video games, there's it's a very, niche areas of, areas to pitch. And so internet movie database is one. What's another one that you can, Google's great.
LinkedIn. I have a lot of people use LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn's good. I don't love getting, I'll befriend people on LinkedIn, and I'll see songwriter, producer, and I'll look at them. If we have mutual friends, I'll accept their invite. And a lot of times people will pitch me on LinkedIn. Personally, I'm more of an email, and I'll try to respond and say, hey, thanks, email me, and give them my email, because I just lose track when I have to log on to my social media and try to track things with email. And I would think most supervisors are like this.
Sure.
When you're sitting in front of your email, most people are like this with business. It's like you've got your email in front of you, you sort through your emails, and there's stuff that takes priority over others. That's just the natural course of things. For me, I flag my priority emails, and that's time-sensitive material that I have to attend to today or this week. Stuff that comes in that's not time-sensitive, if there's a lot of flagged emails, that stuff just gets lost. If there's a few flagged emails, I might flag that a different color. To be listened to might get flagged blue, and it might be because I like that person's pitch. I like what they have going on. Or while I'm working on one of those to-do items, action items, I'll be listening in the background to something someone sent me. I do that a lot. And, at the end of the day, there's a lot of music out there. And when you listen to as much as I do, and as much as most music supervisors do, the better stuff rises to the top, and it's very quick. You get conditioned to knowing what to listen for stuff to really stand out. And if you hear something right away that oh yeah, they used a whistle in the track. When I hear a whistle in a track, unless I'm listening for a cheerleading track.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, okay, 1980 something, maybe that happened, but it hasn't since. It can really data track. There's certain production techniques that if someone does from the get-go, I'm on to the next track. There's lyrical things. There's definitely phrasing things. One of the biggest things for me is vocal phrasing and delivery of vocals. You could have a great vocalist, and that makes a huge difference. The vocalist makes everything. A great vocalist can sell a bad song. But if the phrasing's wrong and it's a great vocalist, like they phrase something that just feels weird, that will turn me off, and I will, if I don't have time to get back to them, or I don't think they're going to want to make changes, I'll just move on. I've definitely, and still try to let people know I like it, but this, and this needs to change. Probably 80% of the time that I do that, people reject maybe not reject isn't the right word, are defensive about my response.
Sure.
And not likely to make those changes. So because of that, I'm much more selective now. And I used to do that a lot more, and then I got a lot of hate mail. So I was like,
sure.
I need to dial that back a notch.
Yeah, people get set in their ways. They're like, this is my art. They take very great pride in it.
Yeah.
And, just taking any criticism, it's not really what they anticipated. They just anticipate it to be perfect to everybody, but everybody's got a different ear. So are there different tools that you're using to stay organized? Like, are you using platforms like Disco or Dropbox or anything like that?
No, I haven't got on the Disco wagon yet.
Okay.
I use Box. I've been using Box for the past decade, and it works for me.
Okay.
Email, Excel, Google Sheets, Google Docs, Box. Yeah.
Sure. So what are you typically looking for? Like, are you always working on a project and you're listening to stuff? Like, how are you kind of keeping track of what you like and what you don't like? Are you putting everything in Box, to potentially reach out later? Are you flagging stuff in your emails? Like, what's kind of your organizational process from finding something to putting it to to putting it into a project you're working on?
Yeah, well, it's a timing thing, really. Someone could send me some really great, I don't know, reggae, and I may not have any need for reggae, not for anything I'm working on. And between the supervision and licensing and libraries, I have my own library. I have a Latin music record label now. I have another library I'm building. I have a lot of different avenues that I can hear something and think, oh, that could work for this.
Sure.
That doesn't work for that, but it could work for this. But if I don't hear that, and I know what that is. I mean, if I get a reggae song like I just released, I use reggae because I just released a dub reggae album. I don't know, it was actually January because COVID's kind of slowed things down a bit. But,
sure.
Because I just released that, if after that release someone says, hey, here's some dub reggae tracks, if they're fantastic, I might not respond. I might say these are great, but I'm all set for now. Mm-hmm. It has to be really in the pocket for what I'm working on at that time. And if it's something really, really outstanding, then sometimes I'll just reach out and say, thanks so much for sending. The music's great. I really don't have anything for it right now, but please stay in touch and leave it at that. But if it's something that it does fit something I'm working on, my first email is that, this is great. I like it. I think I could use it here. Here's my terms. Let me know. And we go from there. And I say my terms, that's if I'm signing the material to my library or a project that I'm developing or something. So I'm kind of one of those guys. I like to get the business up front and out of the way, especially with artists. I've found learn from my mistakes. And in the past, I used to put that off and wait till later, and then it gets kind of messy. So I'm very transparent up front that this is how I run my business. Here's my terms. Here's what I think I can do with it. I never make any promises other than that I'm going to try my best to work something to make it sync, to get it making money. Really is my main goal, is to make money from the music. So sometimes I have songs that live in my catalog for years. Today I licensed an instrumental rockabilly piece, and I've had it for at least 10 years and never thought I'd license it, but I pitched it for something like, I don't know, 6 months ago, and it finally stuck. So it's just one of those things, it's got to be the right project at the right time. And when I live with my music, artists they might not hear from me for years and years and years, but I still have a relationship with their music constantly because it's still in my iTunes.
Sure.
And for years now, I've been scrolling my iTunes every week, every day for pitches, seeing their name, seeing their song. I may not always click on it, but I remember it. I know what it sounds like. And eventually, I get this mental catalog of, okay, that's going to fit for this. So when I get the request, Jody, I need some instrumental rockabilly stuff, I know exactly which artists to go to for that because I've seen them time and time again and thought, oh, yeah, it's rockabilly. Oh, yeah.
So when somebody emails you and you like it, do you typically sign them directly to a project, or do you have to sign them to your library or your project or your label? And then, you kind of catalog them that way. And then if a project comes up, you pull from your catalog or your library.
Sure. Yeah, no, they're two different things.
Okay.
So when I'm supervising something, it doesn't have to come from my library.
Okay. That makes sense.
No, when I'm supervising something, I'm serving the client, and the client comes first. So if there's a music search that needs, a replacement for, I don't know, like Lana Del Rey or something, I'll hit up my go-to labels and managers and sometimes libraries, but if it's something like Lana Del Rey, I know it's got to be like, they want an indie artist with something going on, and for some reason she denied the use, but they want someone like her.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's a library search, even if it is a library search, I'm still reaching out to other libraries to conduct the search. And usually it's so specific what they need. It's very rare, actually, that I'm on a project that they need something that I'm like, oh, I got that. Here you go.
Yeah, sure.
It's very, it's got to be very particular. It happens on occasion, and it never seems to be an issue with that. Yeah, when I'm signing something, it's more about, my day-to-day is probably, I don't know, 60-40. 60% of my job is licensing, 40% supervision and clearance, right? So I'm still building up my catalog, what I started doing, licensing songs to other supervisors, to editors, to producers. So I'm still building these libraries and I have sub-publishers who distribute them for me as well. And I need to supply them with content too. So I have to release albums, and I constantly need to be releasing material now. So, as a library, you're operating as a record label, even though it's not in the traditional sense, although I do release to Spotify and whatnot. It's not a traditional record label. It's like I still have to have releases scheduled so that my distributors, which are my sub-publishers, can release material in their territories to their all their clients as well.
And do you typically, when you're in the music supervisor role, do you typically go for independent artists? Do you sign bigger artists? Like, do you kind of prioritize independent artists over the bigger artists, and then why or why not?
When I'm music supervising, it's always very specific. So, and it depends on the budget. If there's, if there's no problems with budget, then it's open, which means I could go after U2 if I want to,
Sure.
But it doesn't mean that I'm definitely going to go after U2. I definitely would like, my personal preference is to find someone who's up and coming, that or someone that's established but not superstar level, that has something going on.
Right.
They've got some type of following and some activity that can support the film that I'm on or the TV show that I'm on. They'll bring their fans to watch.
Mm-hmm.
That's always a good look for me as a supervisor too. And I'm always they're my client. I'm trying to look good for my client, right? I want to make them happy.
Of course.
So like if I bring them a hot act, and they'll be like, oh wow, you killed it with this one. And so that's always a good look if I can do that. So but it's also about what works for the spot. Sometimes it's a complete unknown that lands the spot, and it's because the song worked really well and someone pitched it to me, and it just worked.
Mm-hmm. So when you say you have a budget, what is the budget being allocated to? Is it to those license fees that you're paying out to the artists?
Yes.
And is there anything else in the budget?
Usually I'm given a music budget for clearing the songs that they need in the project. So they might, let's say there's 8 episodes and we have my brain's not working. All right, let's say there's 4 episodes and we have $200,000.
Sure.
So,
sure.
$50,000 an episode.
Okay.
And each episode has 5 songs in it.
Okay.
So an average of $10,000 a song.
Okay.
So I know what my average is, and I need to find songs that work within that budget for the terms that I need. That's usually what the budget's for. If something comes up and there's like a recording session, or we need to hire a sax player or bring in an orchestra or a choir or something, then I need to point out to them, that's going to cost about this much, and we need to either move some funds around, like that one spot that we had 10,000 for, now we have 7,500 for. So it's sometimes it's a puzzle. It's all about putting all the pieces together, keeping everybody happy, maintaining the value of the copyrights too. I try to maintain the value and give the artists, more often the labels and the publishers, what they deserve and what they should be getting for those fees or for those rights that the client's going after. And, it's also a balancing act there. Like a lot of clients, most clients want everything. They want all media, worldwide perpetuity, and sometimes there's not a chance it'll ever be in a theater. So I talk to them and try to explain that to them, or ask them to consider, if you don't request theatrical rights, then we can get a better deal. And, sometimes they come around and other times they don't. And then we bring them the quote and then they come around.
That's a really good point for artists. Like if you're working with a music supervisor and they're asking for, all the rights in perpetuity and, theatrical is in there, you can up your budget because they want it more. They want to use it for more, even though it may never, ever be used for theatrical. So you can use that as a bargaining token. But, on the flip side, like you said, if they got rid of it, then you can potentially lower the fee for that. So what are some of the kind of the standard rates? Like what for an in context, for a trailer, for are you working on like any video games or anything like that? And what can an artist make from the low end to the high end on like typically one or two syncs maybe?
It depends on the artist.
Sure.
Where they're at with their career.
Okay.
And it depends on the spot. License fees can range wildly. Anything from, $250 for a festival license, $500 for a festival license, all the way up to, let's just assume we're talking about unknown artists.
Sure.
Okay. Unknown artists can make, up to 250,000 on the extreme high end, I think. So there's a really just a broad spectrum, and it's very situational. It depends on the situation and the type of placement. Ads, trailers, they've got bigger marketing budgets, but it's also more competitive. Mm-hmm. So, you're competing with the majors. In all of this, you're competing with the majors. But usually the entry point for artists, unknown artists, is TV. There's a lot of content being made right now, probably more than ever, even.
Interesting.
COVID being the exception. But that said, COVID has created this world where, we need more entertainment.
Yes.
And my understanding is a lot of productions are now shooting overseas while, the U.S. still tries to recover from the COVID situation. And there are, productions happening again in Hollywood that have resumed and just under new standards. So it's not like it's going to go away and the need's greater. It's just that I think it's going to dilute the market a bit. So we're probably going to see, because of so much content, we're going to see lower license fees. And because of COVID, we're going to see cut budgets. But that said, again, for an unknown artist, TV is a good spot to look at because there's a lot of content being made and there's a lot of need for music.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's just for the fees, the license fees. Correct.
Yeah.
That doesn't include the royalties on the back end.
Yeah, that's true. Royalties on the back end. I always advise other songwriters and composers to look at that like bonus checks. They're not something to rely on unless you're like a composer on a film, or you're going down that path, or you're a composer on a TV series. That's where it can really. It can really be fruitful. Like in my situation, I had a theme song once. It it's not something that it didn't make my career. It started my career. It launched my career.
Sure.
But, you have to have multiple theme songs that run for years and years and years, or get a show that's syndicated and have a theme song on that. And those spots are really, really competitive and highly coveted. You got to be in the right place at the right time. And
it's like Inner Circle's Cops theme song, Bad Boys. They're living in mansions out here because of that song.
Is that right?
Yeah, I'm sure of it. Look at that song. That show aired for 20, 30 years, and how many times, how many reruns, and
if you have that song,
yeah. But if you could get a theme song like that, or the Seinfeld theme show, or big shows like that.
I was just gonna say Seinfeld,
Friends, and
that
all those things.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm assuming theme songs are very difficult to get, because especially if you're competing for a show like Friends or The Office or something like that, they're going to be going after higher end composers and musicians, so it might be a little bit more competitive.
Yeah, but it happens if you put it out there in the world. If you keep,
sure, of course, nothing's impossible. In fact, the word itself says I'm possible.
I know the gal who got the Parks and Rec theme song, and I know the guy who did the Office theme song, and both of them I repped at one point, and I don't know the stories of how they got those theme songs, but it's I'm sure it's circumstantial, because one of them is like a guy who had this '80s single, like one hit wonder kind of guy.
Yeah.
And he also composes, and I don't know how he got that Office theme song, but he did. And then, the other one is, she's more or less she's a known artist in her circles, but she's not on a major or anything. And she got the Parks and Rec theme song. So she was just, if you put it out there in the universe and keep saying, I want to do a theme song for something, that's what I want to do. Mm-hmm. You're going to say that to the right person at the right time after they heard your stuff and they love your stuff. And I should take some of my own advice. I need to start saying this more.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, you could put it out there, put that energy out there, and you can make it happen. But like the Office theme song is one of my favorite shows. The first 3 notes, it's like you instantly know what show it is.
Yeah,
it's like the first chord there you've got, and it's like everybody knows instantly what it is, and it's crazy. I think theme songs are interesting, but I think they're a little bit more difficult to get into. But like you said, it can be done. If you put that energy out there, you say it at the right time, to the right person who's listening to your stuff, who knows? That's
right. But a lot of those theme songs too, the production's going to own the song. They're going to own the publishing.
True.
But that's okay. You want to let them.
Yeah. The guy that says, I wrote the Office theme song, it's like, can probably get any other theme song you want.
That's right. And it's, as long as he's not giving up his writer's share, if they're owning the publishing, it's one thing, but if they're trying to do that direct license thing, that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean that, those writers' royalties, that's better than getting a hit song. Hit songs can come and go. But, syndicated TV shows are huge.
Sure. So one last question before I dig in, before we let you go. When working with a music supervisor, we touched on kind of how to pitch a little bit, what you kind of look for, how you organize, and kind of how you keep track of everything. But what are some things an artist can look for in, say, a contract with a production, with a music supervisor? Do you recommend they work with a sync agent? Do you recommend, what are some things to keep an eye out for in a contract so they don't get totally screwed?
In a contract, in a license, in a sync license? In a license,
yeah.
Well, I should preface by saying I'm not an attorney.
Sure.
So I definitely would advise any artist to seek legal counsel if they get offered a sync license.
Absolutely.
If that's where it comes in handy having representation, like a sync agent, like myself or someone like me. A lot of people kind of take issue with giving up a percentage of the license fee, but when you consider what you pay in attorney's fees, so that's something to consider. something to look out for in licenses. I mean, that in context and out of context thing would be one thing for the trailer use. It's very uncommon to have out of context use included in a license.
Or what are some of the common things that people get confused? Like maybe there's 2 or 3 things that are almost in every contract or license, and maybe break those down. What does it mean?
I'm not following. Can you be a little more specific?
Yeah, so like I would assume it's similar. I've never had a license, so this is all kind of new to me.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming a license is like a contract where you have 2 or 3 pages, and it's like each section has its own portion. You know, like the indemnity clause or the sunset clause in like a management contract.
Absolutely.
So what are some of the clauses in a license, and what do they kind of mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's the go through a license. There's I can pull one up. That might be the easiest thing to do, honestly. Not to mention, sorry, it's I'm just kind of brain dead at this point today. Let me pull one up, okay?
Sure.
Yeah. Pull up my template. Right. I mean, I have a very basic template. You know, usually mine will say, here's the use, you know, the licensor, which is you, the owner, the owner grants to the licensee, which is me or the production company, you know, the non-exclusive right, meaning we don't exclusively have this right. You can license this elsewhere, but to do X, Y, and Z. To synchronize the use, to create edits of it, you know, within the territory of the world or the universe or North America or Asia, for a period of 6 years or in perpetuity, which is more common, depending on the type of spot. But, you know, and the type of rights in all media rights, which is a term for everything under the sun, like TV, theatrical, internet, social media included, DVD rights, you know, anything you can think of. Streaming rights nowadays is very, very common. Satellite, subscription, cable. There's even something in here that says microwave use.
Wow.
Yeah, webcast, satellite. You know, what else is on here? Like video discs, mobile phones. So when people are streaming from their phones. Now, a license would not include should not include the right to sell your song as a download on their website, unless that's a separately negotiated thing. I've seen it come up, but usually it's not for sale. It's more like we want to post it on our website, on the CBS website, and credit you, which is a great thing. You want to let them do that. You know, the license fee is defined, the term, the assignment, which means, I mean, the licensee, which is us, the production company, can assign the rights to a distributor if they want, which is usually the end goal with a film. You warrant that you own or control 100% of the rights. You're going to definitely do that in the license because that protects our client, protects the production company. Indemnification, which I'm not going to go into indemnification.
No.
You just got to Google it.
Yep.
You know, there could be something in there about a cue sheet that you'll receive a copy of the cue sheet, which is something that's submitted to ASCAP and BMI and CSAC for tracking royalties. The agreement's going to be governed in the state of New York or the state of California. You know, any problems that come up, there's going to be legal action potentially, or there will be mediation. That's sometimes in here. It'll be an arbitration instead of there will be no what's the saying? There's nothing in person. There's no going to court. We're going to settle out of court. It's going to be an arbitration if something comes up. So if you put something in there and there's a sample and someone waves their hand and says, I own the right, and there's a problem, that could come up. There's also something called, what's it called? It's I can't think of what it's called, but it's basically injunctive relief. It's called injunctive relief. And what that means is that if there's a problem, you have no right to force the production to be removed from any outlet. So if something were to come up after you license the song to the production, and you or no party can say Netflix needs to pull that down right now. That's not going to happen. And that's a very important part of contracts, is that it's called a waiver of injunctive relief. So that should be, just from my end as a supervisor, that should be in there. Mm-hmm. That's really the core of it. There's the direct license thing is something probably you asked what would be something to look forward to avoid, and that would be a big thing, the direct license. If you see that language in there, then, understand what it means. If you don't, then talk to someone about it. And, you have to weigh the options, and you can always ask. You can always go back and ask, is there any way to remove the direct license? I did that with CNN, and they said, sure. And they removed it. Mm-hmm. It was just a simple question. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I just wanted some like bullet pointers on like what to kind of expect in a license, just so when you get it, it's not super overwhelming. And then when you take it to, say, an attorney, you can say, hey, like, I understand what this is and what it does, but can you, obviously it's going to be in like technical legal jargon, and have an attorney kind of break it down. Sure. And, like you said, it's always, always, always best to have an attorney review any of this stuff before you sign anything.
Yeah. So. And, I will say that I'm going to be starting, I'm not sure when, but I'm going to be starting an online course about all this at some point here. I'm just starting the planning phases of it, so it'll be more, deeper dives into this stuff. We've kind of touched on the broad strokes, but it'll be a much deeper dive into a variety of topics like what we've discussed here, and then some.
Great. Yeah, that's exciting. Cool. So This was such a great conversation. I learned a lot.
Awesome.
And there's so much, like I said at the beginning of the show, I'm interested in kind of getting into this world, and I'm kind of learning everything I can from professionals like yourself, and what to look out for, what are some things, what did people fail at, what did you learn from it, all those types of things.
Sure.
Just best arming myself, knowledge is power. So this was such a great conversation. So before I let you go, how can the listeners keep up with you, your company, if they have any questions about anything you mentioned, how can they ask those, all that stuff?
Sure. I have a multitude of websites, but any questions, I guess, maybe, I don't know, do you usually field questions for you probably don't do that. Any questions they have, they can email me. Jody@hdmusicnow.com is my email. That's public knowledge, so that's not a problem. You can go to hdmusicnow.com or jodyfriedman.com, and a lot of this stuff will be covered in my course, which is going to be elevatemymusic.com. And I'm sorry, what was the rest of the question?
No, just how can they keep up with you, and how can they ask questions if they have any
questions? I'm on social media, Jody_Friedman, and I have a trailer artist name called Soundbreakers. We produce reimagined covers and remix originals for trailers, and that's through my label Collaborate Music and collaboratemusic.com. And please come follow my socials. Let's connect on socials, and I'll follow you back. And I like to connect with artists all the time. So just hit me up, and thank you. Thanks for having me. I love the name of your podcast, When Life Gives You Lemons.
Thank
Very
you.
clever.
Yeah, thanks. I was going to wear my lemon shirt today. I have a shirt with lemons and vines and leaves on. I was going to wear it, but I wore it like 2 episodes ago. So I'm like, I don't want them to think I wear the same shirt every day.
Sure.
But yeah, I'll put all your links and stuff in the show notes below as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jody. This was so informative. Such a great conversation, and keep in touch. Definitely, if I have any questions, I'll definitely reach out. I know this is a world I want to get into, so you may be hearing from me soon.
Likewise, Lennon. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Thank you, Jody. Have a good night and take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.